He said goodbye to the elephant. What it did next? Left the team. Speechless, Amboseli Reserve, just before sunrise. A bull elephant lies still near the outer marsh, his massive frame pressed into the dirt, his sides rising with effort. A tear in the skin along his rib bleeds slowly, caked with soil and flies. The early wind does little to keep them away. His trunk is curled beneath his chin, unmoving. His ears flutter weakly, just once, and then fall quiet again. This is not how elephants sleep. This is how they fade. Ranger Samuel approaches on foot, his boots dragging faint lines in the dust. He does not call out. He simply crouches near the elephant's chest, places a hand just above the heart line, and waits. Beneath his palm there is breath, but shallow, irregular, and slowing. He doesn't speak to the others yet. There's no rush. Nothing will change fast now. By the time the sun touches the acacia trees, the team has gathered nearby in a wide circle, quiet and watching. None move closer. One vet unwraps a canvas kit but doesn't open it. From a distance, the bull looks as if he might be sleeping, except for the blood and the dust matted into his tail and the dark streak across his flank. The wound is not fresh. It's at least a day old, likely more, likely from another bull, likely territorial. They know the signs. Samuel stands slowly and signals to one of the assistants. A water canister is brought forward, poured gently onto a cloth, and passed to him. He presses it against the elephant's cracked trunk. There is no reaction, no twitch, no reach, just the soft press of wet fabric against dry, weathered skin. They don't name elephants here. They track them by range and pattern, sometimes by scars. This one has been seen before, alone, mostly, older, calm, strong, but now his breathing skips every third inhale and his tongue has begun to dry inside his mouth. Samuel knows the math. If he does not rise by midday, the pressure on his own body may collapse his organs. If he does not drink soon, his kidneys will begin to fail. If infection is already inside him, they are behind the clock by more than a day. Still, they don't move quickly. They know better. They wait to see if the bull will decide. That's how it works here. Intervention is careful, rare, earned. A distant call rises from the northern edge, a low, drawn-out trumpet. The team freezes. Samuel doesn't turn. The bull's eyes do not follow the sound. There is no sign that he even hears it. One ranger quietly notes the time in his field book. Another begins recording temperature. They keep their distance. By late morning, the dust around the bull's side had darkened. The wound is still weeping. A small movement beneath the rib cage shows the slow pump of a struggling heart. Samuel returns to the same spot and kneels again. This time, his hand does not rise and fall with the breath. It hovers. There are only two outcomes now. Either he rises within hours, or the herd returns to find his body cold. If they try to move him too soon, his spine could fail. If they do nothing, he may slip into stillness before nightfall. The risks are simple, known, and final. A soft rustle comes from behind. The vet, unzipping the kit. But Samuel doesn't nod yet. Not while the bull's eye remains half open. Not while the breath still comes. Wind moves across the marsh behind them, lifting dry reeds. The elephant does not move, not yet, not at all. For 3 days the sky over Amboseli stayed clear. The heat came early and lasted late. Each morning, Samuel sat cross-legged in the same patch of trampled grass beside the bull. Each night he slept near the corner of the vet tent, wrapped in his jacket, close enough to hear the elephant breathe, if he still did. They had tried everything within reason. Cooled water dripped from soaked cloths held to the tongue. Fluids delivered slowly through a long, careful line along the ear vein. Shade was stretched above him using poles and canvas. A tray of soaked branches and peeled baobab fruit sat untouched near his trunk. Nothing stirred him, not even the scent of food. On the second day, his eyes stopped following movement. Before that, he would sometimes blink slowly when Samuel passed. Now they stared forward without tracking. The wound on his side had dried at the edges, but the deep center remained swollen, red, and warm to the touch. When the vet pressed near it, the bull flinched once, barely, and then lay still again. There was no pushback, no call, no twitch of the tail. Samuel stopped giving updates. There was nothing new to say. Every hour was the same. The elephant did not rise. A younger ranger named Tomasi took over note-taking and rounds. He asked questions quietly, unsure of when to speak. Samuel only nodded. "If he rises," he said once, "he might live." But he never said more than that. By the third evening, the team began rotating shifts. Only Samuel stayed through every one. He slept lightly, waking at any change in wind. Every shift in tone from the birds nearby. Twice he rose suddenly, thinking he'd heard a trumpet. Both times it had been distant calls. Other elephants, not this one. On the fourth morning, while the light was still low and golden, a sound broke the rhythm. A grunt, not loud but deep enough to pull everyone's attention. Samuel was already moving when the others turned. The elephant's front leg had shifted. It scraped forward slightly, stirring a patch of dirt. Then again. His body leaned, ribs pressing into the ground harder as if he were trying to roll. His head lifted slightly, only to fall back with a thud that sent dust rising. The vet stepped forward instinctively, but Samuel raised a hand. They waited. The elephant's eyes fluttered once, and he groaned again. Shorter this time. The leg didn't move again. The moment passed. His breathing slowed once more into that irregular, fragile rhythm they'd come to know. He had tried. That much was clear, but he had failed. A medic whispered, "Should we try again?" Samuel didn't answer. The answer was already on the ground in front of them. If they moved too soon, they risked breaking more than they could repair. If they waited, they might lose the last chance of standing. If the bull couldn't lift his own weight today, by nightfall, he might not have the strength to breathe against it anymore. The vet turned and opened the small cooler. Another fluid pack, just in case. Samuel stayed beside the trunk, watching. The flies had returned. The food remained untouched, but the dust near the leg still held the mark of where it tried to push. He said nothing, but when the wind moved through again, he placed a hand on the bull's forehead and let it stay there, long enough to feel the skin twitch once beneath his fingers. He wouldn't rise today, but he hadn't let go yet either. Morning passed without change. The bull had not moved since the failed attempt. His body lay pressed deep into the soil, his leg still curled awkwardly beneath him. The wound had darkened overnight. Now it glistened slightly under the sun, the center swollen and hot. The canvas shade no longer helped. Heat gathered beneath it, heavy and unmoving. Samuel stood nearby, arms folded, eyes on the rise and fall of the elephant's chest. The rhythm was slower than before. One breath every 20 seconds, sometimes more. The kind of slow that didn't come from calm, but from fatigue, too deep to reverse. The kind of slow that often came last. Behind him, the vet packed up the cooler. The line of fluid bags remained untouched. No one had unrolled the gauze. They weren't needed anymore. No injections, no ointments, no last doses. Everything that could be done had been done. The rest no longer belonged to them. Tomasi closed the field log and tucked it into his pack. He didn't ask for instructions. No one did. The moment didn't require language. It was clear in the stillness, in the way the flies landed freely now without being swatted by a twitch or flap. The bull no longer responded to touch. When Samuel had placed water against his tongue that morning, there had been nothing. No swallow, no reaction, just a mouth too dry to close. The vet approached quietly, stopping at Samuel's side. "We'll let it be," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. It was the final step in a process already known. To force a dying elephant to stand was to risk killing it faster. The stress alone could break the heart. The weight of its own body, unsupported, could collapse a lung. And for what? There was no sign he wanted to rise any more. Samuel nodded, once. Then I stepped forward alone. He crouched beside the bull's head, near the ear not buried in the dust. The skin was cracked at the edges, fine lines splitting beneath dried mud. He brushed a hand across it gently, clearing the dust that had settled overnight. His hand moved slowly, carefully, not to disturb but to offer something like goodbye. The skin flinched under his fingers. Barely. A soft twitch. Nothing more. Samuel exhaled. "It's okay," he said quietly. The words came out dry, almost unheard. Not a command, not an appeal, just release. The kind of permission offered when no more can be done. He let his hand rest there a moment longer, then ran it once down the thick fold of skin behind the jaw. The eye remained half open, still, glazed. A thin line of moisture sat along the edge but did not fall. Then he stood. He did not look back as he walked away. The others didn't move. No one followed. The air felt heavier now, as if the ground itself understood what had passed between them. The vet returned to the tent and sat beside the closed kit. No one touched the elephant again. If the bull rose now, it would be his choice. If not, he would pass as he lived, without force, without hands pulling him up, without pressure to fight beyond what he had already given. In the distance, the light began to shift. A soft orange stretched low across the marsh. Wind moved lightly through the dry grass. The bull did not move, but his last choice remained his. The wind picked up just after noon. Not strong, but steady, moving low across the plains, brushing the edge of the marsh in slow sweeps. The temperature eased slightly, enough for the team to shift from under the canvas. Still, no one left the perimeter. The bull remained where he had always been, silent, motionless, still breathing, but only barely. Samuel sat with his back to the ranger truck, arms on his knees. His eyes didn't drift. Every few minutes he counted the rise and fall of the chest. Still slow, still shallow. The dust around the elephant's body remained undisturbed. No shift in posture, no roll of muscle. He had not moved since the morning. It was Tomasi who noticed first. A soft shape in the distance. A lone figure near the thorn trees on the ridge walking slowly across the flatland. He said nothing at first, just watched. The gait was familiar. Rounded shoulders, low steps. A young elephant. Not a calf, but not yet full-grown. Alone. She kept her distance for nearly half an hour, pausing often, trunk lifting to test the air. Then, without sound, she changed direction and began walking straight toward the bull. The team stood up slowly, keeping behind the truck. No one called out. No one moved forward. Samuel raised a hand, not to stop, just to hold stillness. The young elephant reached the edge of the bull's body and stopped. Her eyes didn't blink at first. She stood beside him, quiet, her trunk hanging down like a rope. Her feet were dusted with pale soil, her side marked by fresh scratches from the acacia. She did not trumpet. She did not panic. She simply stood. Then her trunk moved, slowly, as if unsure, and reached toward the bull's side. She brushed along his rib once, then again, higher this time, where the skin was unbroken. The contact was light, brief, measured. She didn't press hard, didn't nudge, didn't try to wake him. It was not a family gesture. There had never been signs these two were from the same group. More likely, it was the scent that called her, the same scent that had drifted over the grass earlier, the one that carried endings. Elephants know that scent. They followed it for centuries. After a long pause, she stepped back. Her head turned slightly as if to listen, but the bull gave no sound. Still no movement. Tomasi whispered, "She's not afraid." Samuel kept his eyes forward. Not yet. The young elephant circled once, not close. Not far, enough to keep him in sight to mark his stillness from all sides. Then she came near again. This time she touched his trunk. Barely. Just the edge of it. The bull did not stir. What mattered was not whether he moved. It was that something had shifted. Dust now lay broken in a semicircle around his body. The untouched silence of the last 3 days was disturbed. That meant something. By late afternoon, she remained nearby. She had not left. She grazed at a distance, ears flicking. Always watching, always listening. The team did not approach. They would not interfere with what they did not understand. What was at risk had not changed. If the bull stayed down, he would die before dawn. If she left, so would the last chance for herd contact. And if she returned with others, the risk of panic or injury could rise. But for now, she stayed, and the dust no longer lay untouched. The light began to fade. Long shadows reached across the plains, stretching toward the marsh like thin arms. The young elephant still stood nearby, silent, her eyes fixed on the unmoving bull. She had not called out. She had not wandered far. She waited, turning her head occasionally to the south as if expecting something more. Then, near the edge of the tree line, movement. 1, then 2, then more. A loose line of elephants approached, slow and cautious. They came from the open plain rather than the water, dust clinging to their legs. The matriarch was first, broad, heavy-shouldered, ears tipped with a tear on the left. Behind her, 2 younger females and a bull calf moved in quiet formation. Another adult trailed, swaying slightly as she walked. 5 in total. Not a large group. But they moved with purpose. Tomasi whispered, "Same herd?" Samuel nodded. She brought them. No one stepped forward. The team remained still behind the truck, not hiding, only watching. This was not their moment. The group approached slowly. The matriarch paused first, holding her head high, trunk lifted, ears wide. She took in the scent, the shape in the dust, the still body of the bull. The younger ones circled wide. None made noise. The calf approached nearest first. He moved to the bull's feet and sniffed along the toes, then stepped back. A second later, he nudged the dirt near the front foot with his own. Not hard, just enough to shift the dust. Then the adult female came forward, the one with a narrow frame and pale streaks along her tusks. She stood over the bull's side and reached her trunk across the wound. It wasn't a press. It was a hold, steady and long. She kept it there, unmoving, her eyes fixed on nothing. When she pulled back, another came beside her. This one did not reach forward. She lowered her trunk to the earth, scooped a small patch of loose dust, and flung it gently over the bull's rear foot. Samuel exhaled. They know. The matriarch stepped closer now, still cautious, still slow. She walked around the bull, pausing at the head. Her trunk hovered but did not touch. Then, without sound, she turned her body and stood with her side to him, like a barrier, like a shield. And then something changed. A tremor, barely visible, but real. The bull's ribcage rose higher than before. Not a breath, an effort. His trunk twitched. His right leg flexed and dragged half an inch through the dust. The herd didn't move. Again, the bull shifted. His front leg bent at the joint, pulling in toward his body. His spine arched slightly. His head rolled. He was trying. Samuel stepped forward instinctively but stopped himself. His breath caught in his throat. The team remained frozen. Another groan escaped from the bull's chest. A low, broken sound, more air than voice. His tail flicked once, then again. The calf stepped back. One of the younger females followed. The matriarch turned and touched her trunk to the bull's side, not to push, not to lift, just to make contact. A silent acknowledgement. The bull tried again. This time his back legs shifted beneath him. He did not rise, But his body had moved. His spine was no longer pressed flat to the ground. His eyes opened, blinking dust. He was awake. He was still broken, still bleeding, still weak. But he had responded. If he stopped again, he might not survive the night. If he pushed too hard, his legs could fold beneath him. But if the herd stayed, if they circled him again at dawn, he might rise. They would not help him stand. That was not their way. But they had returned, and the earth no longer held him alone. By first light, the sky over Amboseli softened into a pale wash of gray and amber. The herd had not left. They stood loosely around the bull, quiet and still, their bodies forming a wide ring. The young one who had arrived first lay curled near the brush, dozing between stretches of alertness. The matriarch had not slept. She remained near the bull's head, her eyes steady, her weight balanced evenly. Samuel rose slowly from where he had rested, knees stiff, back sore from the hours on the ground. He approached just far enough to see, but not so close as to interrupt. The vet watched from the tent, silent, gear untouched. There was nothing more to prepare. If it was going to happen, it would happen now. The bull shifted. It began with his shoulder, just a slight jerk, then a roll of tension across his back, a pause, then a deep breath. Not the shallow, gasping rhythm of before. This was fuller, intentional. He tried to push, his front legs bent under him, elbows pressing into the soil. His head tilted forward as he leaned, ribs groaning under the strain. The movement sent a cloud of dust into the air, and his wounded side opened slightly, bleeding again. He collapsed. The herd didn't react. They didn't move toward him or away. They simply waited. Samuel held his breath. The bull lay still for nearly 2 minutes. Then again, another effort. This time slower, more calculated. He dug his front feet into the earth and shifted his center of gravity. His spine bowed. His hind legs dragged inward, folding awkwardly beneath him. He rose to his knees. The effort trembled through every limb. His head hung low, trunk limp. But he was upright. Not fully, but off the ground. A groan escaped his throat, low, hoarse, vibrating through the dust. Tomasi whispered, barely audible, "He's up." Not yet, but part of him was. The young bull from the herd stepped forward then, tentative, unsure. He paused at the shoulder, trunk outstretched. He didn't touch the wound. He placed the tip of his trunk behind the older bull's shoulder blade and pressed. It wasn't forceful, just a nudge, a question. The bull shifted his weight. His body swayed. His knees shook. Then, one slow, straining lift. His back legs straightened. Hips rising. His front legs locked with effort. His spine aligned. For a second, he froze, unmoving, all weight balanced. And then he stood, weak, staggered, wounded, but upright. Dust swirled gently beneath his feet as his body adjusted. His trunk swung low. His ears remained still, but his ribs expanded in one full breath, then another. Samuel took a step back, one hand on his chest. His fingers trembled. The herd did not trumpet. No celebration. No rush. The matriarch turned her body slightly, just enough to make room beside her. The older bull didn't move forward. He stood where he was, still catching his balance, still finding his legs beneath him after days of stillness. But he stood. If he fell again, it could be over. His legs might not hold a second time. The wound might rupture under pressure. But for now, none of that has happened. He had risen. And the herd remained silent, watching him become weight-bearing again. Not because they pulled him, not because they pushed him, but because something in him chose to try one more time. The morning wind passed through the grass, lifting old dust from where he once lay, and left it behind. The sun had cleared the eastern ridge by the time the bull shifted again. He had stood for nearly half an hour, still unsure, breathing in slow, uneven intervals. His legs trembled with the weight of it, but he had not fallen. The herd remained close, but not crowding. Just presence. Just patience. Then, without signal or sound, he took a step. His front leg stretched forward, hesitant but placed with care. Dust broke beneath his weight. His rear foot dragged slightly, leaving a crooked line in the soil. But it moved. Another step followed, slower, heavier. The strain showed through his back, ribs expanding with each breath, trunk swaying loosely like a tethered rope. His gait was awkward. One side of his body resisted, still recovering from days of pressure and injury. But his will was present. Forward was the only direction he seemed to understand now. The herd parted, not away from him, but around him, leaving a soft corridor toward the edge of the marsh. The grass thinned in that direction, opening toward a shallow stretch of water and a band of taller reeds, a place where the ground would give but not collapse, where food was sparse but within reach. He walked toward it. Each step was a test. His back leg faltered at times, the joint stiff and slow to respond, but he adjusted, shifting his balance slightly, using his weight carefully. Not once did he stop. Not once did he turn back. The young female walked beside him. She didn't lead or follow. She stayed parallel to his steps, ears tilted forward, occasionally brushing her side near his flank. When he slowed, she slowed. When he staggered, she adjusted. There was no urgency in her, only attention, as if she had known from the start that he would rise, and now she would see him through. The rest of the herd remained behind, watching, unmoving. Samuel stood near the edge of the rise, far enough not to interfere. His boots sank into soft soil with each shift of weight, but he didn't move. He had no radio in hand, no field notes, just eyes on the bull. The vet stepped beside him, arms crossed, voice low. "That wasn't us," he said. No one replied, because it was true. No fluid or dose had brought him to his feet. No hand had lifted him, no rope, no harness, just instinct, just presence, just the subtle permission to try. The bull reached the edge of the marsh and paused. The ground here was damp, but not flooded. He bent his head slowly and lowered his trunk into the shallow reeds. Water clung to the tips. He raised it to his mouth and drank, deeply, slowly, a breath between each pull. Then, with a slow exhale, he took another step. His rear leg dragged again, marking the earth. A trail behind him now. Not blood, not collapse, just a passage. Samuel stepped back. He wouldn't follow. This was not his story to finish. The young female kept near. Not touching now, just near. Together they moved into the soft grass. The sky had turned pale blue overhead, clouds just beginning to stretch thin across the upper rim. The breeze came from the west now, lifting warm dust and carrying it eastward, across the line of tracks that led from the place where he'd nearly died. They did not look back, and no one called them to. 3 weeks passed. The heat broke briefly during the second, a soft rain falling over Amboseli one night, enough to darken the soil but not change its shape. By morning, the sun returned. The marsh swelled slightly, feeding the lower reeds. Herds moved through in quiet rhythm, their paths worn into the land like slow-moving rivers. At the edge of the southern ridge, where acacia trees thin and the dust turns fine, Samuel walked alone. No vehicle, no gear. Just a worn field notebook in his back pocket and a bottle of water tied at his side. The path was familiar. Not marked, but remembered. He passed the place where the bull had lain. The earth had flattened there, pressed by weight and time. A few broken canvas straps remained, half buried under loose grass. The shade poles were gone. The field tent had been cleared, but the imprint in the soil had not vanished. Not completely. He didn't stop there. He kept walking, toward the low rise where the water pools briefly after a storm, where elephant herds sometimes cross when the air is still. The light was soft. A layer of thin cloud muted the sun. Dust hung low in the air, stirred only by his steps. Then he saw them. Tracks, wide, deep, heavy. A front right print, long and broad, pressed into the soft edge of the trail. A slight skew to the rear left, the kind that came from weakness, not misstep. Then again, a second set, a clearer drag line behind the rear, the same limp, the same arc. Samuel crouched slowly. He reached down and traced a scarred impression with his fingers. Near the heel, a half-moon groove marked the place where injury met earth. He touched it gently. Not as confirmation, just as a witness. Then he noticed the others. Smaller tracks. Lighter. Parallel. A consistent distance beside the larger ones, never crossing, never lagging. Each one whole, round at the toe, sharp at the edges. No drag. The young female. Still with him. Samuel sat back on his heels and looked across the flat. Nothing stirred in the distance, no herd in sight. But they had been here. Hours ago, perhaps. Maybe a day. Moving slowly, steady, without hesitation. He didn't need to see them. The signs were enough. They had returned to this stretch of land not as the dying and the desperate, but as a part of the rhythm again. Moving with the season. Marking the dust. He pulled the field notebook from his pocket and opened it to the last page. There, already waiting, was the drawing he'd made. Rough sketches of the foot, the angle of the wound, the estimate of healing. But now he added a note. Left ridge crossing. Limp remains. Still paired. He didn't sign it. Just closed the book and rested it on his knee. In the distance, wind picked up through the grass, carrying the scent of moisture from the north. The breeze bent the tallest reeds and sent a quiet rustle across the land. Samuel looked once more at the half-moon print and smiled. It was not a victory. Not closure. Just something quieter. The confirmation of something tried. Something endured. He stood, dusted his hands, and turned back toward the path. Behind him, the tracks remained, and where the dust had once marked an ending, it now carried only one message. They had passed through,